Okay, so welcome back to our second in our series of Stories, Spelling, and Symbolism Sundays. Today we're going to be taking a look at How the Elephant Got His Trunk, or The Elephant's Child, from Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories. These are a collection of stories that go along with The Jungle Book, which you may be more familiar with, which is the story of Mowgli, and the various other characters that he meets in that book, which we will cover another day. And so I wanted to start here because I'm going to be going into other topics on the channel. And one of my favorite topics has always been sort of what would you call these? It's a cautionary tale, right? Or a cautionary trunk in this case. But cautionary stories, stories that have a lesson in them, that teach us something about ourselves, but also warn us about something about maybe ourselves or nature or human nature or the things that we might have to watch out for in the world. It's like somebody wrote us a message back in time and they said, "Hey, by the way, you may run into a problem one day that you don't know the way out of, or you may accidentally even wander into a problem all by yourself. And the lessons that you learn are the things that are going to help you get out of that situation and to keep moving on in life." So, in our continuing series, I'm continuing with the Elephant's Child because this was one of the stories that my parents actually gave to me when I was very very young. I would say even one of the first stories that was read to me. We used to have a book. It was illustrated. I can't even remember what all the illustrations were like inside the book, but I do remember there were the scenes of the elephant getting its nose stretched out by the crocodile. And it always just stuck with me. It was one of the books. My dad always enjoyed reading this story to me when I was young. And I was always like, "But Dad, why do you want to keep reading me the story where the elephant gets his nose stretched out? I don't get it. What are you trying to tell me? Is there some sort of hidden meaning? What am I not picking up on?" And then later in life, maybe upon further reflection, you see where maybe they were trying to tell you something before you ran into some problems in life that they might have seen coming up. So I'm just going to go through reading the story here. It's one of many in this book. Once again, I haven't read all of these since I was probably a child. They blend in for me with a bunch of other stories from Africa because I know a bunch of the Anansi stories and the like how the hippopotamus got its, or why the this and the that. It's like they all blended together. They're all blended together in my brain now because it's been ages since I've even looked at them. So that's why we're going back to one of the oldest standbys in my library. But also one of it's pretty intense. So I'm just gonna warn you guys ahead of time. I might have some commentary, or we might you know what is it called, we'll go off the path a little bit, depending on how far we go. So here we go. I'll show you the art in a second. We'll get to that page, but I'll show you the just the first few pages here of the book, just because this is a very nice copy if you were gonna like purchase one nowadays, you know. And so there's our table of contents. I'll just show you here. We've got how the whale got his throat, how the camel got his hump, how the rhinoceros got his skin, how the leopard got his spots, the elephant's child, the sing-song of Old Man Kangaroo, the beginning of the armadillos, how the first letter was written, how the alphabet was made, the crab that played with the sea, the cat that walked by himself, and the butterfly that stamped. And actually, just based on, oops, I lost the page there, but actually just based on just the titles of some of those, I think we should read all of them. I think we should read all of these someday. So maybe for the continuation of this year, I might just be bringing you guys more stories from Rudyard Kipling's Just So Stories on Sundays so that we can go through and we can learn all of these ones. All right, we'll start here because those all sound like good lessons to just start with, you know? So, but we're going to skip ahead to the one that I know the most, my favorite one, I guess. One of the few that I know, right? Which is The Elephant's Child. And so, in the high and far off times, the elephant, O best beloved, had no trunk. He had only a blackish, bulgy nose, as big as a boot, that he could wriggle about from side to side, but he couldn't pick up things with it. But there was one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of satiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all Africa with his satiable curiosities. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her feathers grew just so, and his tall aunt, the ostrich, spanked him with her hard claw. He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty, and his tall uncle, the giraffe, spanked him with his hard hoof. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, why her eyes were red, and his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, spanked him with her broad hoof. And he asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why melons tasted just so, and his hairy uncle, the baboon, spanked him with his hairy paw. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked questions about everything he saw, or heard, or felt, or smelt, or touched. And all his uncles and aunts spanked him, and still he was full of satiable curiosity. One fine morning, in the middle of the procession of the equinoxes, this satiable elephant's child asked a new fine question that he had never asked before. He asked, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" Then everybody said "Hush!" in a loud and dreadful tone, and they spanked him immediately and directly, without stopping, for a long time. By and by, when that was finished, he came upon the colo bird, singing in the middle of the wait-a-bit thorn bush, and he said, "My father has spanked me, my mother has spanked me, all my aunts and uncles have spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and still I want to know what the crocodile has for dinner." The colo bird said, with a mournful cry, "Go to the banks of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out." In that very morning, when there was nothing left of the equinoxes, because the procession had proceeded, according to precedent, this satiable elephant's child took 100 pounds of bananas, the little short red kind, and 100 pounds of sugar cane, the long purple kind, and 17 melons, the greeny crackly kind, and said to all his dear families, "Goodbye. I am going to the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile has for dinner." And they all spanked him once more for luck, though he asked them most politely to stop. Then he went away, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up. He went from Grahamstown to Kimberley, and from Kimberley to Camas country, and from Camas country he went east, by north, eating melons all the time, till he came to the banks of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, precisely as Colo Bird had said. Now you must know and understand, O best beloved, that till that very week, and day, and hour, and minute, this satiable elephant's child had never seen a crocodile, and did not know what one was like. It was all his satiable curiosity. The first thing that he found was a bicolored python rock snake curled around a rock. "Excuse me," the elephant's child said most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bicolored python rock snake in a voice of dreadful scorn. "What will you ask me next?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but could you kindly tell me what he has for dinner?" Then the bicolored python rock snake uncoiled himself very quickly from the rock and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. "That is odd," said the elephant's child, "because my father and my mother, and my uncle and aunt, not to mention my other aunt, the hippopotamus, my other uncle, the baboon, have all spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and I suppose this is the same thing." And so he said good-bye very politely to the bicolored python rock snake and helped to coil him up the rock again, and went on, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up till he trod on what he thought was a log of wood at the very edge of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. But it was really the crocodile, O best beloved, and the crocodile winked one eye, like this. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but do you happen to have seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" Then the crocodile winked the other eye, and lifted half of his tail out of the mud, and the elephant's child stepped back most politely, because he did not wish to be spanked again. "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile. "Why do you ask such things?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but my father has spanked me, my mother has spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt the ostrich, and my tall uncle the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, as well as my broad aunt the hippopotamus, my hairy uncle the baboon, and including the bicolored python rock snake with the scalesome, flailsome tail just up the bank, who spanked me harder than any of them, and so, if it's quite all the same to you, I don't want to be spanked any more." "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "for I am the crocodile." And he wept crocodile tears, to show it was quite true. Then the elephant's child grew all breathless. He panted, he kneeled down on the bank and said, "You're the very person I've been looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner?" "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "and I'll whisper." Then the elephant's child put his head down, close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by his little nose, which was up to that very week, day and hour and minute, had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful. "I think," said the crocodile, and he said it would between his teeth like this, "I think today I will begin with elephant's child." At this, O best beloved, the elephant's child was much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose like this, "Let go, you're hurting me." Then the bicolored python rock snake scuffed down from the bank and said, "My young friend, if you do not now, immediately and instantly, pull as hard as ever you can, it is my opinion that your acquaintance in the large patterned leather ulster," by this he meant the crocodile, "will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson." This is, by the way, this is the way the bicolored python rock snakes always talk. Then the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches, and pulled, and pulled, and pulled, and his nose began to stretch. And the crocodile floundered into the water, making it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail. And he pulled and pulled and pulled, and the elephant's child's nose kept on stretching, and the elephant's child spread all his little four legs and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose kept on stretching, and the crocodile threshed his tail like an oar, and he pulled and pulled and pulled, and at each pull the elephant's child's nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him. And I'm guessing that's Jesus. Ah. Then the elephant's child felt his leg slipping, and he said through his nose, which was by now nearly 5 feet long, "This is too much for me." Then the bicolored python rock snake came down from the bank, and knotted himself in a double clove hitch round the elephant child's hind legs, and said, "Rash and inexperienced traveler, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension, because if we do not, it is my impression that yonder self-propelling man of war, with the armor-plated upper deck," and by this, O best beloved, he meant the crocodile, "will permanently vitiate your future career. Vitiate your future career." That is the way all bicolored python rock snakes always talk. So he pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled. But the elephant's child and the bicolored python rock snake pulled hardest. And at last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose. With a plop, you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. Then the elephant's child sat down, most hard and sudden. But first he was careful to say thank you to the bicolored python rock snake, and next he was kind to his poor pulled nose, and wrapped it all up with cool banana leaves, and hung it in the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo to cool. "What are you doing that for?" said the bicolored python rock snake. "Excuse me," said the elephant, "but my nose is badly out of shape, and I'm waiting for it to shrink." "Then you'll have to wait a long time," said the bicolored python rock snake. "Some people do not know what is good for them." The elephant's child sat there for 3 days, waiting for his nose to shrink, but it never grew any shorter, and besides, it made him squint. For, oh, best beloved, you will see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it into a really, truly trunk, same as all elephants have today. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder, and before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead with the end of it. "Vantage number 1, said the bicolored python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now." Before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk, plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his forelegs, and stuffed it into his own mouth. "Vantage number 2, said the bicolored python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here?" "It is," said the elephant's child. And before he thought what he was doing, he slooped up a sloop of mud from the banks of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo, and slapped it on his head, where it made a cool, sloopy, sloshy mud cap, all trickly behind the ears. "Vantage number 3, said the bicolored python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. How do you feel about being spanked again? Excuse me, said the elephant's child, but I should not like it at all. How would you like to spank somebody? said the bicolored python rock snake. I should like it very much indeed, said the elephant's child. Well, said the bicolored python rock snake, you will find that new nose of yours very useful to spank people with. Thank you, said the elephant's child. I'll remember that. And now I think I'll go home to my dear families and try. And here's where I'm just going to put a little point where I'll be pause before I finish the rest of the story, which is the moral of the story that they're trying to teach you is that when you learn a hard lesson in life, right, you don't need people to tell you it's a hard lesson anymore. So you don't technically have to go and I'm not encouraging the spanking of anyone. Okay, this is like internal logical spanking of what was wrong in your thinking before and symbolic of the step of gaining that new knowledge so now you can hold your own when you are challenged in intellectual conversation. So that is what the moral of this story is. I'm not encouraging spanking, so we'll just continue from there. Okay. So the elephant's child went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk, and when he wanted to eat fruit, he pulled the fruit down from a tree instead of waiting for it to fall, as he used to do. And when he wanted grass, he plucked it up, the grass from the ground, instead of going on his knees as he used to do. And then when the flies bit him, he broke the branch off the tree and used it as a fly whisk, and made himself a new, cool, slushy, squishy mud cap whenever the sun was hot. And when he felt lonely, walking through Africa, he sang to himself down his trunk, and the noise was louder than several brass bands. He went especially out of his way to find the broad hippopotamus. She was no relation of his, and he spanked her very hard to make sure that the bicolored python rock snake had spoken the truth about his new trunk. The rest of the time, he picked up the melon rinds that he had dropped on his way to the Limpopo, for he was a tidy pachyderm. One dark evening he came back to all of his dear families and coiled up his trunk and said, "How do you do?" They were very glad to see him, and immediately said, "Come here and be spanked for your satiable curiosity." "Pooh," said the elephant, "I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking, but I do, and I'll show you." And then he uncurled his trunk and knocked two of his dear brothers over head over heels. "Oh, bananas," said they. "Where did you learn that trick? And what have you done to your nose?" "I've got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River," said the elephant's child. "I asked him what he had for dinner. He gave me this to keep." "It looks very ugly," said his hairy uncle the baboon. "It does," said the elephant's child, "but it's very useful." And he picked up his hairy uncle the baboon by one hairy leg and hove him into a hornet's nest. Oh, and that bad elephant spanked his dear families for a long time, till they were very warm and greatly astonished. He pulled out his tall ostrich ant's tail feathers, and he caught his tall uncle the giraffe by his hind leg and dragged him through a thorn bush. He shouted at his broad aunt the hippopotamus, and blew bubbles into her ear when she was sleeping in the water after meals, but he never let anyone touch the colo colo bird. At last things grew so exciting that his dear families went off one by one, in a hurry, to the banks of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to borrow new noses from the crocodile. When they came back, nobody spanked anybody anymore. And ever since that day, O best beloved, all elephants you will ever see, besides all those that you won't, have trunks precisely like the trunk of the Satiable Elephant's Child. I'll finish it here with a poem that he added after it. It's actually a very important one for the channel, but I'm going to hide it here. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and where and when, and how and why and who. I send them over land and sea. I send them east and west. But after they have worked for me, I give them all a rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I am busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch, and tea, for they are hungry men. But different folk have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs from the second she opens her eyes. 1 million house, 2 million wares, and 7 million wives. And so that is Rudyard Kipling's The Elephant Child, or How the Elephant Got His Trunk, from Just So Stories. And, I'll be back again next week to continue on as we go down the list. But thank you for joining me. And if you enjoyed that, please give a like, subscribe, comment, share, all the fun stuff. And we'll see you again next time for more stories, spelling, and symbolism Sundays here on the channel.